Welcome to another exciting episode of the Trading Bell. The first of its kind, we shall be having a deep conversation with the man running the biggest bank in Eastern Central Africa. That is Dr. James Mwangi, the Chief Executive Officer of Equity Bank. He'll be discussing with us how the bank has managed through the pandemic and, of course, what he sees in the horizon when it comes to economic recovery. Many thanks for joining us on the show, Dr. Mwangi.
Thank you very much, Abe.
And just before we get into this discussion, we'd like to take a look at Dr. Mwangi's profile.
Dr. Mwangi is a celebrated African entrepreneur and named by the Financial Times as one of the top 50 thought leaders in emerging markets and among the top 20 most influential people in Africa. He is a career banker with a bias in inclusive finance. He's a certified retail banker and was admitted to the honorary membership of the International Academy of Retail Banking. He's a group managing director and chief executive of Equity Group Holdings. Dr. Mwangi is credited with providing the innovative leadership that has seen Equity Bank transform from a small and technically insolvent building society to one of the largest and most successful digital and inclusive banks in the world. Equity Bank has become the first bank to go fully digital across 6 countries where the bank operates. Dr. Mwangi is also the founding executive chairman of Equity Group Foundation, the social impact investment arm of Equity Group.
All right, thank you for hosting us and, of course, looking sharp, looking well-toned. It's been a year of resilience.
Yeah, a very trying year where we had to retain sanity. We all had needed to do things that would help us really to become resilient. And part of it was picking up things like gyms and spending hours there so that essentially we could really have our minds remaining steady and focusing on what mattered most.
Sure. I remember billionaire Jack Ma saying, it is important for us to remember the best thing you can do to yourself is to stay alive after the pandemic. We can always make the millions. We can always make the billions. What was your philosophy that kept you going?
I think for us, last year was not about the equity. It was about keeping the lives and livelihoods of our customers and our communities nourished. We felt that this was not a year we could measure with balance sheet and profitability, but what would happen to our customers. And if you look from the onset, the first thing was to embrace a very defensive mechanism, not of Equity Bank, but of our customers, rescheduling up to 45% of all our loans to give our customers a break so that they could focus on feeding their families. They could reduce anxiety about loan repayment when they had no cash flows. We then also looked at community and said, the wider community, we could wipe out mobile charges and fees to them. And that amounted to 150 million Kenya shillings every month in terms of waiver. And we felt that would boost the available cash to the families or enhance what was available to the disposal of the families. While at the same time, we ensured we provided PPEs to the doctors in all the hospitals that were dealing with COVID. We continue to do that. We still have money to keep them protected for another year so that once the first line of defense of self-preservation was infringed, then there would be a doctor for within our community. And lastly was to look after our Wings to Fly kids, ensure we gave them allowance that kept them really focused on their classes while providing them with facilities that bridged the digital divide so that they could not be left behind. So the more we did was more focus on people. We became very people-centric and we lived true to our purpose, focusing on lives, transforming lives and livelihoods. This time it was protecting lives and preserving livelihoods.
And Dr. Mwangi, you raise a very pertinent issue. where we have to ensure sustainability post the pandemic. And clearly, it was a delicate balancing act for many players in the financial services sector. And from where you sit, we did see quite a number of interventions from government when it comes to ensuring that the banking sector is cushioned. And looking back at the various reliefs that were introduced, and also as one of the leading banks, do you feel the measures bore any fruit from where you sit?
The government was very, very proactive, and I want to commend the president for the bold measures of containing and mitigating against COVID-19. If it was not for those measures, maybe our story would be similar to that of South Africa. Maybe our story would be similar to that of America, where you have large-scale infections in community. But the very steep steps of COVID containment and management that the government moved on from day one is what has helped us to be in this position where, yes, we can talk of 100,000 infections and 2,000 deaths, but it could have been worse. Because we have seen it with South Africa, we've seen it with the developed world. The second thing was trying to focus on the economy. We as a bank would have done what we did, give our customers loan repayment breaks, forgive them all fees and charges on mobile platforms, but that would not have been enough. We needed concerted effort. We needed an integrated approach. And the government played very well. Despite the low headroom in terms of physical and monetary space, the government rolled out massive stimulus package, particularly the Mutaani program. That kept people, particularly in the slum areas in our major urban centers, provided with livelihood. We also saw government reach out to corporations by reducing taxes so that companies would survive, companies would adjust better, companies would have time to retool and to purpose. And we also saw the budget being led and readjusted almost with the supplementary budgets 3 times to ensure that they are adjusted to the environment. And lastly, is to the focus on the health sector. Keeping our children home was the right decision because of the uncertainty. We needed them safe. They are now back to school and they can continue with school. Buying time so that we could have a vaccine against COVID was essential so that we didn't have infection. Building up 300 beds in every county hospital was a necessary step. I bet to say that one of the big 4, and that is health, was achieved because of COVID. So there was also a silver lining in the sense that we now have sufficient bed capacity that can compare bed to population ratio maybe with middle income countries.
All right. And Dr. Mwangi, what would be the net effect of some of these measures? I know as a bank you restructured quite a number of loans, targeting quite a big number of your customers. What is the overall effect it could have on the banking system? Because you want to cushion customers, while at the same time, you as a bank, you need to make money at the end of it.
As we saw, this was not a year for any bank to make money. Any bank that focused on making money got it long. We have made money for all the years that, for instance, Equity, we have been in existence for 38 years. This was a year to start with your customers and community. It was a different year. It was a 1 in 100 years event. And consequently, 99 years you could have made money. But the 100th year, I was really looking at community. It was about humanity. And the lesson we all learned was that maybe we need better integrated approaches with the community, such that the business creates trust and creates relationship and share prosperity with the community that we are in. One of the biggest lessons that we have learned out of COVID worldwide is how unsustainable the world is. The inequality in the world is not sustainable. The world is not resilient. So we have learned we better build the world better. We don't need to rebuild the world. We need to build it afresh, better, where we address the challenges that have been thrown straight before our eyes. The first one is inequality. The inequality in the world is not sustainable. The second one is the economic model that the world has embraced needs to be relooked. The issue of capitalism, we need to really check whether capitalism needs to be reshaped. Can we give capitalism a human soul? Can we give capitalism a human face? Can we smoothen the rough edges of the greed of capitalism so that the world generates enough, but we don't distribute fairly because realism hasn't been a very good distribution mechanism. And we have ended up in a resilient and more importantly, unsustainable world.
All right. And you take me to my next area of focus, and this is totally linked to what you've just said around the economy. And I remember the head of state recently did address the country, and he touched on some of the specifics. These are the numbers. And the economy did not grow as was expected last year. We actually had negative growth. It stood at 0.6%. At the same time, the president is confident that the economy will bounce back in 2021 to grow at 7%. While at the same time, Dr. Mwangi, 560 billion shillings, equivalent to GDP, was lost during this corona year. For many Kenyans, 560 billion shillings. You're a banker. What does this mean?
It meant we lost 5% of the entire wealth of the economy. This economy is worth 10 trillion shillings, but half a trillion was shaven off, and we were left with 9.5 trillion. That is a massive loss. That is what is reflected by deceleration of our GDP growth rate from 5.8 to 0.6. And that then meant nearly between 1.5 and 1.6 million jobs were lost. That wealth that we are talking of half a trillion shillings is mapped to about 1.5 million jobs. And the president's emphasis, and all of us should really support the president, in an economy like Kenya, where unemployment is already high, losing 1.5 million jobs is not sustainable, particularly for young people, because it means livelihood. It means families that are going hungry. It means livelihoods have been affected and lives has been affected. So there is urgency in helping to rebuild the economy. I'm optimistic that we'll be able to achieve a 6% GDP growth rate on account of a couple of things. The first one and the most significant is reopening our schools. People underestimate the impact of schools in our economy. It means that the public transport bounces back in its full swing to take children to school in the morning and to take them back home in the evening, to take teachers in the morning to school and to take them back in the evening. It means that we have to feed these school children, and the kitchens of 30,000 schools have to be kept busy. And that is a huge market for our agricultural sector. Cereals have to be produced to school. It speaks true of those who provide, including books to schools, water to schools, and everything that we can talk about at school. That will be the biggest injection to our economy. The second biggest economy injection is removing significantly most of the COVID containment measures, particularly lifting closure of some sectors. The more we open the sectors, Kenya benefits a lot from the hubbing effect of transport and logistics. When we get Jomo Kenyatta International Airport and our port hub of Mombasa are completely in full swing, it means jobs are being created, opportunities are being created. Those are the parameters. But however, the private sector also needs to come on board. And it's that where Equity Bank chose to really stimulate the micro and small and medium enterprises by pumping in $500 billion shillings, equivalent to what the economy lost in 5 years, just to ensure we stimulate that sector to bounce back, to thrive, and not only create jobs, but create market for our goods and services. And then everybody becomes active. And that is how you get back. The reason why it will be easier to achieve 6% is because we are coming from a lower baseline. We had reached $100 billion US economy, or 10 trillion. We're now 9.5. So the denominator is even smaller, and that will be a bigger impact. But the international market, countries like US, stimulating their or rolling out a stimulus of $2 trillion means that the impact will be felt worldwide. And we have started seeing how the markets are responding. And lastly is the confidence and hope that will be given to the economy by the availability of the vaccine. We are now confident that the health issue is being dealt with. So what we all need to focus on is rebuilding our economy, and in the process, rebuilding our lives.
Rebuilding the economy will not be a walk in the park. It will require a lot of capital to be injected in the economy by the private sector players. It will also require stimulus programs where the young people can be trained. There are those who need to retool their businesses to have a digital-centered approach. We have e-commerce, which is proving to be the next big thing for Africa and an opportunity for the young people. Is the bank doing enough in terms of upscaling our youth, upscaling the unemployed to a point where they can compete on the global stage?
I'm glad that to announce that we have signed an agreement with the MasterCard Foundation, where they have set aside 10 billion shillings for business support services. That is financial literacy and entrepreneurship. And we envisage that over the period of 5 years, we'll train 5 million people, building their capacity and competence to be able to fit in the workplace, retooling them, giving them more purposeful training that enables them to engage in the economy meaningfully, whether it is digital training, whether it's financial literacy, whether it's entrepreneurship. And that, in the process, will then, the bank on its hand, we're rolling out $500 billion shillings in credit to the private sector. And capacity plus funding combined, we believe, will institutionalize those 5 million jobs in the marketplace.
Speaking about the young people, Dr. Mwangi, they are considered as being too risky when it comes to banks lending credit to this demographic. As a bank, how would you ensure that you do not fall prey to a sector that many banks have shied away from?
The mean age of Kenya is 18 years. Meaning that half of the population of the country is below 20. It means that if you are an economic actor in this economy, you would need to learn how to deal with the youth. It's not the option of avoiding that sector doesn't arise. So it's for us to learn that sector. And as we learn, we have chosen ourselves to mitigate the risk of widespread lending to that sector by taking credit enhancement guarantees so that we can mitigate that risk from one front. The second front is to train that youthful population on financial literacy, on guarantees, assessing them coaches and mentors, those who have seen it all, so that we can work together. So essentially, that is how we have embraced that sector. And I'm happy to say that 72% of all our lending is to SMEs, which is dominated by the youthful population.
All right. And quite a noble task the bank is taking up. And allow us to shift gears, Dr. Mwangi. Looking at the banking sector, of course, the tailspin of all that has come with the pandemic is yet to fully manifest. Some of the analysts were predicting that we'll start to see the harsh effects of COVID in the banking sector in this financial year, where many banks will be going to report their results. As a bank, where is equity?
Let's talk generally about the banking industry. The banking industry is an aggregator of the economy. So it is true, if you really want to see the picture of the economy, the truth, an honest view, you look at the banking industry. And it's true the banking industry has not performed well on two major parameters. One is the quality of the loan book. It's no secret that NPLs in the banking industry have reached 14%. It's not secret that majority of the banks that are listed in Nairobi Stock Exchange have given profit warning this year. So we're really talking about a banking industry that is heavily devastated by the ravage of COVID-19. And that is the aggregate effect in the economy, because banks do intermediation. So as intermediators in the marketplace, then they reflect the reality on the ground. However, there are organizations that happen occasionally to come out as a black swan. And I want to say this last year may go to history as one of the best performing years for Equity Bank. And performing is not in terms of profitability. We can raise our hand that we have not driven down any of our customers out of business by demanding loans. We stood with them. We felt we had the greater resilience and capacity, and we chose to take the bullet on behalf of our customers. To me, that is the greatest contribution that I take proud of. I've been in this bank for 30 years, but maybe my best year that I'm proud of is standing on the customers and taking the bullet on behalf of our customers, giving 45% of our customers a shield of loan rescheduling, giving our 15 million customers the shield of 150 million shillings every month in disposable income by waiving bank charges for them. It is starting with the Kenyan community, providing PPEs to all our doctors, nurses, and clinical officers dealing with COVID centers, that I can take pride to say when COVID happened, we lived to our purpose of protecting lives and giving our people dignity. That is beyond any profit that Equity could have ever registered. It doesn't matter how, that act itself is priceless. And profit is just a financial expression of a price. But the act of compassion that this bank reflected within the community, I would say, is priceless, and is hence the best performance because the outcome was priceless.
And Dr. Mwangi, as we finish off, it would be unfair for me to not ask you, as COVID struck, many institutions took refuge and tried to see how can they stay afloat post-COVID? And like research has shown, most of the pandemics, it will take an economy close to 3 to 5 years before we can have the economy back on its feet. And looking from where you sit, you have a panoramic view of different sectors of the economy. And as a bank, what will define the next phase for Kenya now that you're seeing agriculture sector is picking up gradually, manufacturing had been battered, it is also picking up. As we close, I'd like to hear from you, what will shape the next season for Kenya?
Thank you very much, Abi. I think the first thing is to say, from where I sit, it will take us 3 to 4 years for us to bounce back to the trajectory that we had. It's not going to be a V recovery. It most likely be a prolonged recovery spanning 3 years. And then hopefully 2024 we'll be able to get back to the trajectory that we had set in 2019 of the economic growth.
Excellent. And your parting shot, Dr. Mwangi, you've touched on some serious figures when it comes to money that will be lent out to small businesses. And in just under a minute, I'd like to know which businesses has the bank seen potential in? Which areas are opening up now that we are coming out of an economic recession that ideally showcased some of the sectors that businesses can be wiped out, and it also showcased industries that we never thought of that are slowly taking center stage?
I think COVID has taught us a very big lesson, and I'm glad that I was at the center of COVID-19 board when we made the decision that we shall not import PPEs, but we will try and train and develop capacity within the country. That taught me a lot, that as a Kenyan people, there are very many things we could be able to do. I looked at a factory in Kilifi that is now globally exporting the syringes that are being used all over the world, and talk of 19 countries. That itself, and the fact that we have become a major global exporter of PPEs to Europe, to US, any part of the world. And just about 9 months ago, every PPE we used was imported, shows the capability and the competence of our people. And I want to applaud the government for investing well in education. We can do better, but our education provides us with a foundation upon which we can build this economy. We have the right skills, we have the right competences. All that we need to do is to take the challenge of developing and making our country better.
Wow, very loaded, very powerful. And I hope you've received your jab for the vaccine.
I'm still on the queue. We agreed we first of all take the medics,
all right.
maybe our teachers, but today I was pleasantly surprised to be told that the COVID board, and particularly I keep on going to the hospitals to distribute PPEs.
Yes.
I can get my jab tomorrow at Kenyatta National Hospital.
All right. So I hope I'll be able to join you.
Gladly. I would like to encourage Kenyans.
All right.
That this is scientifically proven. The World Health Organization has committed itself, and it's a better gamble than gambling with the COVID.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Dr. James Mwangi, for having time on our show.
You're most welcome. Thank you very much.
All right. Well, shooting right from the hip, we've been having a candid discussion with Dr. James Mwangi, capturing how the economy has performed during the COVID-19 pandemic, and he is offering $500 billion shillings to Kenyans by getting to apply for facilities under these tough times for businesses to be able to jumpstart afresh. Will this work? It will only be but a question of time. Well, that's where we wrap it up for this week's edition of the Trading Bell. It has been a pleasure bringing you this edition in courtesy of Equity Bank, and we hope to encourage you out there. keep washing your hands, sanitize, and always wear a face mask. My name is Agina. Until next time, keep it safe.